Once again, welcome to the Jay Show. This is Jay Smith. It's great to have you back. I have with me our expert in Kirat and also in Ahruf, Hatuntash.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Now, in the episode 5, we talked and we introduced some of the problems with the Ahruf and the Kirat. These are the readings, the different readings, and you referred to 7 different readings that...
7 different Ahrufs.
Ahrufs.
Which we don't know what it is exactly.
I tried to find that, and I tried to pull that, and you could not, for the life of you, try to really explain what these are. And the reason why you couldn't explain it is because Muslims can't explain it, really.
We look at the Muslim writings and then they give us some suggestions, some arguments regarding what it might be. But as I mentioned in earliest episode, S.I.N Qadri, who is a Muslim scholar, he says, actually, we don't know what is Ahruf today. So, but whatever it was, Uthman brought it to the one dialects, let's call it in the dialect of Croatia. So
yeah.
Whatever it was revealed to Muhammad when it was in when Muhammad was in Medina in 650s. Uthman got rid of it, and we left with one Ahruf.
So there should be one by the time of Uthman in 650, 652. All the rest have been destroyed, burnt, either on paper form or also in memory.
Yeah.
Now you're coming up with a whole slew of different readings. The Ahruf suddenly appear after Uthman, not before Uthman.
Yeah.
These are coming long after Uthman.
Yeah.
I want to look at just those 5 cities on the right.
Yeah.
These are the 5 cities where readers were sent by Uthman to each of these cities. You have Mecca, you have Medina, you have Damascus, you have Kufa, and then you have Basra. These are the 5 cities that we're going to look at first.
So these 5 cities, perfect Quran went, and also with the person who knew the Quran well.
Okay.
So one perfect Quran, one perfect person.
To preserve it.
Yes.
To make sure there would be no human intervention, to make sure that these all remain sacrosanct, that they remain pure.
Yes. Remember, aim of Uthman was to make the one perfect copy and keep that perfect copy.
So we're not talking about 7 Ahruf now, because those 7 Ahruf come before Uthman.
Yes.
And that's why, in fact, they come during the time of Muhammad.
Yeah.
Right? I hope people are getting this. The 7 Ahruf that Muslims always keep claiming about all should have happened the time of Muhammad.
Yeah.
Before 632, because that's where all the traditions
Yeah.
speak that they exist. Uthman brings it down to 1.
Yes.
All right. So the 7 have gone now. They've been destroyed.
Yes.
Now we're after Uthman. We're now moving into the 8th and 9th century.
I think it will be helpful to ask general question: how come Uthman find it was his right to brought God's revelation from 7 Ahruf to 1 harf?
Okay, that's a huge question. Who gives Uthman the right? Who gives him the authority? He's not a prophet. He's not delegated by God.
Yeah.
What gave him the right to say, I want to bring it down to 1?
Muhammad is asking Angel Gabriel to do favor to him and Arab people that have the Quran in 7 different ways. Yet in 650s, Uthman thinks it's all right for him to brought it to 1.
To bring it down into 1.
Harf.
And we even brought up in the last episode that this would be difficult even if you had it written down in 7 different. They didn't even have the vowelization yet. They couldn't have even done that. It didn't exist. Arabic, written Arabic, was not sophisticated enough to accommodate differences in vowelization, differences in dialectic, differences in the 7th century. In the 9th century, yes.
That's understandable in 9th
That's
century.
why Bukhari is saying this, that these are nothing more than dialectic differences. And Muslims are saying that today. They're not thinking through historically, this makes no sense in the 7th century. Now, let's look at those 5 cities. And we have our Arabic expert here. I like her to go through, starting with Mecca. Give us those names again.
Abdullah ibn Sa'id.
So he died around 682. He went to Mecca with 1 perfect Arabic Quran.
Ibn Kathir.
So Ibn Kathir is, don't get confused this Ibn Kathir with the Ibn Kathir, Tasfir of Ibn Kathir. This is different Ibn Kathir. His dates are 665 to 737.
So early 8th century he dies.
Yes, and he's got 2 students.
Al-Bazzi Qumbul.
And their dates are late 9th century, early 10th century.
So we're talking about 200 to Almost 250 years later.
Yeah. So one perfect Quran ends up in Mecca by Saib, and then from that one perfect Quran, we end up having 3 different Arabic Qurans in Mecca in just 200 years.
And 250
Yeah.
years. So even 250 years later, they're still changing it. They're still adding it. They're still accreting it. This is human intervention is what
Yes.
we're talking about. All right, that's Mecca. Now let's go to Medina. Let's go through those names.
زيد ابن ثابت.
He is one of the scribe secretary of Muhammad. He stayed in Medina.
He is the official secretary. He
of
is the one
Muhammad.
that Abu Bakr used in 632. He is the one that Uthman used in 652.
He is the one who was promised paradise.
Okay, he
by
was promised.
Muhammad.
So
Yeah.
he is the mother lode, you might say. He is the official writer of the Quran
Yeah.
for both recensions.
Yeah.
نافع.
So his dates are 689 to 785.
Okay, Nafa. So he dies a good century and or more later
approximately
after.
100 years after, 130 years
Uthman.
after perfect Quran compiled, and this is in Medina where perfect Quran is compiled, where perfect Quran take place. And then he's got 2 students.
ورش and قالون.
So look at their dates. They are beginning of 9th century. So we are in place called Medina where one perfect Arabic Quran has been compiled, yet 3 different Arabic Qurans end up only within 150 years.
Whoa. All
Or
right.
200 years.
So now
approximately
we're up to
200 years.
6 different Qurans from
Yeah.
the perfect Quran that was first sent to these 2 cities. Let's go to Damascus, a 3rd city.
المغيرة ابن شعبة.
He died around 670.
So roughly 20 years.
Yeah.
ابن عامر.
So his dates are 629 to 736.
Now we come to the 4th city, Kufa, which is today, present day, around not too far from Baghdad in Iraq. And here we're now going to move into 3 different groups.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let's get the names of the first one, of the names that we have here.
أبو عبد الرحمن السليمي.
He died around 690 AD. So he's the one who took the one perfect Arabic Quran from Medina to Kufa.
Right, and he has 3 students. What are their
Yeah,
names?
3 groups.
حمزة الكسائي أبو بكر عاصم.
So look at the dates. Hamza is around 8th century. He died
Late 8th century.
Late 8th century. He died 772. Al-Qasai is beginning of 9th century. He died 804. And Abu Bakr Assam is late 8th century, 778. And those people have students, for example, students of Hamza.
خلف خلاد.
And look at their datings. They are 9th century.
Almost 200 years
Yes.
later.
And Al-Qasai students are.
الدوري أبو علي الحارث.
So it is approximately 210 years after the perfect Quran, which is compiled in Medina under the Uthman. We are in Kufa. We've got already 4 different Qurans.
So here you have already,
6
now we have
actually.
4 Qurans, and we still have another party. What's
Yeah.
the next group's name?
أبو بكر عاصم. حفص أبو بكر شعبة ابن عياش.
So date for Hafs is beginning of 9th century.
Yeah.
He died 805. And Shabbai's dating is 809. So the Quran which is from Hafs, this is the Quran which has been canonized in Egypt in 1924. So this is the Quran where our dear Muslim friends are reading today. Yet it comes from Kufa. It doesn't come from Medina. It comes from Kufa, approximate 200 years after, 150 years after perfect Quran has been compiled.
So this one that I have in my hand right now, this is the one that was canonized in 1924 in Cairo at Al-Azhar University
Yeah.
by those scholars.
Yeah.
This Arabic here, you're saying, comes from 805. It is derived from 805. Do we have that manuscript from 805 written by Hafs?
No, we won't have that manuscripts. That's another topic. But that's like Hafs
They
Quran.
attribute it to
That-
Hafs, is what
yes.
they're saying. And that's
Yeah.
why they call this the Hafs copy.
Yeah.
This is the Hafs Quran. This is not really then that I've always been told that this is Uthmanic Quran. This is the Uthmanic recension.
Yeah, so that's why they say that, because Uthman sent Suleimani to Kufa, and then Hafs is Hafs Quran born around 805,
It's actually 9th century.
beginning of 9th century or late 7th century.
Now, why haven't
Sorry,
we been
8th
told
century.
that this is a 9th century Quran, not a 7th century Quran, not a mid 7th century, an early 9th century Quran? Interesting. Hold on to that. Are you all following this? We're going to pack it. We're going slow for you all to show you that what we're the same themes coming up over and over again. This is not something that's coming from God. This is not something that's coming from Muhammad. This is not something that's coming from Uthman. This Quran that we have in our hand today is coming from many different sources. Already, we're getting up to around 21. We're already 18 that we've looked at already in this episode. And now we found out that this one here that we have said, this particular Quran that we've always been told is known as the Hafs Quran, is actually derived from a student of a student.
Yeah.
Of somebody that was sent to Kufa, not even Mecca, not in Medina, sent to Kufa in Iraq. In 809 during the Abbasid period. So this would be an Abbasid. This would be a Persian individual. Now, let's continue on down with those. So we have 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that come out of Kufa.
Yeah.
Let's go to Basra, the 5th city.
عامر ابن عبد القيس.
So his dates are 674, and
أبو عمرو ابن العلاء.
and then Quran has been attributed to the Abu Amir is he died around 770, so late 8th century, and he has 2 students.
الدوري السوسي.
Yeah, and their date is late 9th century. So perfect Arabic Quran went to Basra with someone who know the Quran very well, and 220 years after that perfect Quran arrived there, we've got already 3 different Arabic Qurans.
Okay, I just want to point out something, and I hope people are showing that. If you could show this on your graph there on the screen. Take a look at the second. You have the first names in each one of the cities. Look at the second group that comes up. Notice their birth dates all come after the persons that they are derived from. So these are not necessarily students, because they weren't even born when these other people were.
Yeah, it passed from people to people.
So
from
already
people
there
to
could be 1 or
people.
2 generations in between these, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
So we're talking about maybe 3 to 4 generations later that you start getting these disputes, that you start getting these differences as far as recitations. And as we're going to find, they are actually consonantal differences.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get into that yet. These are the readings that are now differing. They're objecting to that which they were sent down to.
Yeah.
They're not objecting to their teachers, because these were all born after their teachers were long dead.
Yeah.
But it seems like in the 7th century, in the 8th century, there seems to be disputes coming up. Because a lot of these happened in the 8th century, and then by the 9th century, there's even more students. Now, these are students that are disputing with their teachers.
Yeah.
So there's in-house disputations. This is fascinating, that people disagree about how the Quran should be written or what it should say. Now, that's on the right side. Those are the 5 cities. Let's now move over to the left side of your graph.
On the right side, we saw 7 well-known readings. So they are the well-known ones. Yet, on the left side, we've got still Qurans, but by Muslim scholars, they are identified as, they are not as authoritative as other 7 readings.
They're not canonical.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the non-canonical, and they're authoritative but not canonical.
Yes.
Okay, and these are the 3. Go ahead, the mashhur, is that, am I correct how you say it?
مشهور.
Mashhur, okay.
So we've got the Quran, which was in Medina by,
أبو جعفر.
his dates are 747.
Mid-8th century.
Yeah, and then he's got 2 students.
ابن وردان ابن جماز.
Look at their datings. Their dating is late 8th century.
A good 100 years
So
later.
in Medina, again, we end up having 3 different Qurans,
Okay.
Arabic Qurans,
So
addition to other Qurans which was already in Medina. Remember,
Oh,
we
that's
had
right.
this is again in Medina, but by Muslims, this is not as authoritative as others.
Okay.
So those are like outside of 7 readings.
So 6 coming out of Medina is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in Basra, we've got,
يعقوب الحضرمي.
and his dates are around 9th century again. From him, we've got 2 students.
رويس روح.
Look at their datings again in 9th century. In Basra, additional what we had before, now we've got again 3 extra Qurans, Arabic Qurans.
So another 3. So 6 coming out of Basra.
Yeah.
6 out of Medina, 6 out of Basra. 3 of them canonical, 3 of them non-canonical. 3 canonical out of Basra, 3 non-canonical out of Basra.
Yeah. And then we've got again different Qurans in Baghdad.
تلف البزار.
And his dates are again 9th century, 848 when he died. He has 2 students.
إسحاق إدريس الحداد.
Look at their datings. Late 9th century, early 10th century.
Whoa.
Again, additional what we had in Baghdad, those 2 Qurans are edited to that one.
So these are 250 years later. So here we have another 9 Qurans that are coming out that are non-canonical, and 2 of them are from cities that we've already looked at.
Yeah.
And one of them is a new city, Baghdad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yet, and also we've got some other Qurans by, for example, Abu Amar. And then one Quran is Basra, in Mecca, and another in Basra, which are dated in 7th, 9th, 8th century and 9th century. Yet, tradition just mentions them. It doesn't give us that much information about them.
Okay, so we just know about them.
Yeah.
Goodness sakes, so that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 Qurans
Yeah.
that you're talking about over here. 21 on the right, 13 on the left.
Yeah. But, so Muslims would say those are the qirats, riwayats.
That's 34 different Qurans
And
having
we
different
are-
qirats.
Its latest date is like beginning of 10th century. And we read the Muslim writings, and then they told us there were 25 riwayats was exist in approximately 250 years after death of Muhammad. So Muslims in early
Explain that what
centuries,
you mean by riwayats, because it's a word we haven't come across yet. What do you mean by riwayats?
narrations.
These are narrations.
Yeah. So for example, the Quran you would be reading would tell us this is the Ruh's Quran, which narration comes from Yaqub bin Hadmani. So
Okay.
student and teacher, and then it takes us back to Muhammad according to Islamic tradition.
Hatun, this has been terrific. Just going through. I hope you're all watching this as we unpacked it. Can you now see where there is a proliferation in the 8th and 9th century of different readings? These readings start to come across, and they come out of majorly about 5, well, really 6 cities. You have Mecca, you have Medina, you have Damascus, you have Kufa, and you have Basra, and then you also have Baghdad. So you're having 5 of the cities are canonical readings, and then Baghdad would be non-canonical, along with Mecca and Medina. So you're having a proliferation going on. To me, that suggests there's an awful lot of human intervention.
Okay, let me just clarify something. When Muslims says it's reading, they mean it's only the recitation. Yet, when you look at those Qurans, actually it is more than recitation. It is how it is written down.
Okay, let's just look at what they claim. Let's go through and help me unpack this. There have been, off the internet, I pulled off some of what they claim are considered to be their reasoning. And they give us 7 different categories that these are Muslims claiming, not me, not you. These are what Muslims claim are the reasons why these differences are in reading. One of them is that there's it's nothing more than a change in wording. What would you say to that?
Yes, there are some verses. It is written a little bit different, but it doesn't change any meaning. Yes, those words exist in those Qurans.
Now, are there also changes in words that do change the meaning?
Yes.
So
that's what is
that claim is not necessarily true. There are sometimes
it is part of the story, but it is not whole the story.
not the whole story.
Yeah.
So there are some there are different words like synonyms.
Yeah.
We have that in English. We have that. I'm sure you have that in every
Yeah.
language. They're different words, but they're exactly the same meaning.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's the only ones that they go public
Yeah.
with. We're going to show some in another episode where there are actually quite a few words that not only are synonyms but are antonyms, or even change the meaning completely and change, in some cases, the theology.
Yeah.
So that's not a good enough excuse. Another excuse that comes up is that these are just words or letters that conform to vowelless or dotless script. They're nothing more than, because we don't have the dots yet, it's nothing more than these what we will call consonantal text.
Again, it is part of it, but it is not whole of it.
Okay, because we're going to look at almost all the ones. In fact, these are long after the dots have already been added.
Yeah.
We're talking about up to the 10th century.
Yes.
We're talking about 8th, 9th, and 10th century. All these names, and that's why you went through these dates very carefully. These are long after Uthman, and this is now the time when the diacritical marks have been introduced,
yes,
when the vowelizations have been introduced. We haven't got into that yet.
That's correct.
So you can't make that excuse anymore. We're not talking about Uthman anymore. We're now talking about all after Uthman. In some cases, 100 to 200. In some cases, 250 years after.
Yeah.
Third example they say is, these are nothing more than a change in word order. So you might have he comes late or late he comes. It's the same thing.
Yes, there are some verses which says fought and killed, and in other Quran it says killed and fought. So like, yes, we do have those examples, yet it is not whole story.
Okay, because we're going to see some examples where in one verse it's fought, in another complete different verse, it's in the same verse in another complete reference, another.
Or they used together but in different orders.
Okay, so
that are the examples. But as I said, it's not the full story.
They're only getting half the story in this. They're not being completely honest, and that's why we're doing these series. That's why we're doing these videos. That's why we're actually talking to you, to show you this is not the whole story, and we're going to show you what the whole story is. Another fifth one they come up with is that the form of the word structure is changed. This change could be from a plural to a singular. Nothing more. So it could be singular or plural.
Yeah. Yes, there are the examples of that. We can see them. There are lots of examples of that. But let me emphasize again, it is not full story. It is only part of story.
Like, we're going to get to one later where you can give alms to one poor man or many poor men. That has huge significance theologically. So whether it's plural or singular, it does make a difference in the context.
Like, are you killing one person or are you killing group of people? Are you feeding one person or are you feeding group of people?
And to get salvation, I'd like to know, because I would rather just have to feed one person and make it easier for my salvation if that was my intent. Of course, it isn't. Now, the form of the word, or you might say, the differences in inflection points. That's all it's talking about.
Yes, there are the examples in these 26 different Arabic Qurans. We can see those examples, yet it is not the full story.
Okay, and then the last one they come up with, these are nothing more than differences in pronunciation.
That is the general story I heard all my life. But those 26 different Arabic Qurans claim something else. So overall,
well, not only that, how can you have different pronunciation if you don't have Dama, Kasra, or Fatah? If you have dialectic difference? We already had from our Arabic expert here that just can't happen. Today it can happen, but not that early. Okay.
Yeah, like when you look overall, yes, those 7 categories is part of the story, but overall story is all those changings are making difference in the meaning of the verse.
Okay.
Some of those changing affects theology, some of those changing just different words, different meaning. So sad, our dear Muslim friends don't give us the full story, but thanks that we've got those different Arabic Qurans, we can work them out.
Thank you for having gone and collected all so we can actually ask these questions with the Qurans in hand. Now, let's go to Qiraat. Qiraat is very similar to Ahruf. What would you say is the difference between the Qiraat and Ahruf? Let's just get our Arabic speaker to, do you have any differences that you would say between a Qiraat and Ahruf?
So in Arabic, Qira'at means readings, Ahruf means letters.
Okay, so Ahruf would be letters, Qiraat would be readings.
So, according to Islamic tradition, Ahruf would be the way Muhammad received the revelation 7 different ways, 7 different Ahrufs, which Uthman brought it back to one. Okay, Qiraats are the way, again, the reading. So, for example, we've got the reading of Qalun, we've got the reading of Warsh, we've got the reading of Hafs. So those are the qira'ats.
Okay.
So we look at the Islamic tradition, which tells us around 250 years after the Hijrah, there are 25 different qira'ats was exist out there.
Okay, if I have some questions about this, and maybe we need to bring this up on screen. If we can bring these up on screen, these different questions. My first question is, if you have 7 different ahruf or qira'at, different readings, did Uthman purposely leave out the other 6 when he made his final version? What? Help me here. What would you say?
According to tradition, I would say yes, because it is purposely done. If it wasn't purposely, first of all, they wouldn't burn what is not in the part of the book. All the manuscripts, everything written before 650s has been burned by order of Uthman. So it is done by purposely. Yet, Uthman is a caliph who is the leader of Islamic country, who never met Allah, who never met angel, and who never received any revelation from Creator. But he thought it was all right to bring it to the one level. It's
Okay.
done purposely.
It's interesting. Obviously, he did want to get rid of the 6 because he says to keep it in only one dialect. That's the Qurayshi dialect. What about all these scholars that come after? Because almost all these scholars we looked at their dates, they all come after Uthman. They don't come during Uthman, and they certainly don't come before. So this to me completely eradicates any idea of 7 ahruf. That's a real problem here, isn't it?
Yeah, in that case, there was no point for everything to be written down in one version, because as it went to different cities, it just changed again.
Now, obviously, in the question you brought up, who gave Uthman this authority?
I guess he thought it was right as a caliph, he could do those kind of things.
That's right. He'd forget the other 6 that had come up. Let's just finish off with this. We're going to bring this episode to an end, but with 2 more questions. How can you have dialectical difference with a purely consonantal script? And we've asked this of our Arab expert here. That's true. You cannot have dialectical differences in a consonantal text. And the reason why is because you need, in order to have dialectical differences in a written text, you need to at least have vowelization. You need to be able to have diacritical marks, but more than that, you need to have the dhamma, the kasra, and the fatha, and we'll do that and unpack that in the next episode. Do the other ahrus change the meaning of any verse, even just one?
So we don't know if we have the arufs today, because remember, Uthman got rid of it. The one we have are the qira'ats. Yet, qira'ats changing the meaning of the words.
Okay,
or of the verses.
So they do, and you are claiming right now that they do change. That's the claim you're going to go with.
Yes.
All right, we can't prove that yet. We're going to have to wait. We're going to have to unpack what the different razam are and the different words. We're going to have to actually teach our people, the people that are watching, what we mean by the different letters. That's in the next episode. God be with you. It's so good to have you along. This is Jay and Hatun, the Jay Show. We'll see you in the next episode.